What's up, you guys? Joe Dobby here. I am now a Deck Out Gaming affiliate. Use Joe Dobbs Deck Out at checkout. Deck Out Gaming has tons of singles for Pokemon, Dragon Ball Super, and Digimon TCG, as well as One Piece. They now buy list as well, so don't hesitate to reach out, and they got your back. Really high customer service ratings. Thank you guys, and yeah, let's get to the video. What's up, you guys? Joe Dobby here with another video for you today, and it is very early from the time that I'm recording this. I had just come back from an errand and am seeing so much new news released from Japan regarding the Digimon TCG, so I wanted to dive right into it and talk about some of the things. So I created a little bit of a presentation. As you guys know, I don't really have a kind of like streamlined schedule of different types of videos that I put out. I kind of put out deck profiles and gameplay mainly, but on occasion when I'm very excited for certain news, I do want to bring it to light and create little videos like this. So I hope you guys enjoy, but we're going to be talking about three main things. We are going to be talking about mulligans that have just been introduced and the start of game kind of like procedures that have changed or will be changing in Japan with the release of BT14 and these new starter decks, as well as Ace cards. What is the Ace mechanic? How does that work? Overflow, new texts and new mechanics that we can use. And finally, we will be talking about just the two boss Digimon in ST15 and 16 with a few examples as well regarding some of the other Ace mechanics. And we'll conclude with the overall outlook for the game, at least from my opinion. So I hope you guys once again enjoy. All right, you guys, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that I am actually a Metafy Digimon TCG coach, so you can check me out. On Metafy, just look up Joe Dobby and you'll see that I kind of specialize in purple. I have quite a few or good number of tops in the card game. I'm a two-time national invitee. Unfortunately, didn't get to top either ones, but I like playing a little bit off the beaten path decks anyway. So if you want to build your deck building skill and your strategizing skill playing rogue decks against the meta, I'm your guy. And thank you guys for always supporting the channel with regards to Metafy coaching, with regards to Deck Out Gaming. Shout out to you guys who have purchased cards through them using my discount code. Link will be in the description below. And they ship across North America as well. And just for really just commenting for watching the videos and enjoying them. So that said, before we get started on all of this, I also want to dive into my thoughts on Mulligan currently in the card game. I think Mulligans now, with the direction of the card game being heavily kind of like receiving tons of support with increased draw and manipulating the memory gauge very well through cost reduction and memory gains, I think it's important that mulligans start to play a role into the game. And there's clearly a push for that in Japan now that there are new start of turn effects or start of turn procedures. That said, special shout out to DTCG Review and Rust Marrow and those who operate the main Digimon TCG English Discord. Thank you guys for translating this information, for staying up to date, and for all the card leaks. I am pretty much just a messenger for those who, don't have Twitter or don't necessarily regularly check. So I hope you guys find this information useful on my end as well. So the start of game procedures are slightly changed now. It's gonna be, you shuffle your deck and your Digitama. That's awesome. You decide on who goes first, die roll, coin flip, whatever. And then you draw opening hand of 5 cards. So that is before your security, which is awesome because now you can look at your hand, and if you want a mulligan, you return 5 cards into your deck and you shuffle and redraw. What used to happen was you would get your security for non-super competitive events like Ultimate Cups and some local events. What was previously done is you'd set up your security, look at your hand, and all you would do is send your hand to the bottom of the deck and draw 5 new cards. And the drawback for me with that is Digimon has a lot of natural draw power through your normal Digivolution, and there are a lot of search cards now. Which means if I know specifically what 5 cards are under there, that's extra information for me that goes beyond taking the mulligan. sometimes you'll take the mulligan just so you know what the 5 bottom cards are there, and then, you know, through using multiple search cards, you'll cycle through your deck fairly quickly and get back to those cards when you actually need it. Now it's all up in the air. You gotta reshuffle and draw 5, and I think that is a more fair version of a mulligan, which I like. And at the end is when you place your security, which makes total sense. Some people will probably think, oh, well, that just gives SecCon players an opportunity to add more security into their security threats into their security stack. Well, you know what? It's completely random. So I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's still gonna be as RNG as the previous one that you take the mulligan for. And this happens all before, like, placing the security happens totally after everything anyway, so I think you'll be fine, and then it's game start from there. All right, you guys, so before I dive into the Ace and Overflow mechanics, I did want to show you guys this really awesome kind of like timing chart that the TCG review has kind of like made and shared previously, or at least for our meta still. All you could do is player A would declare an attack, player A would activate all when attacking, and then player B could only really like block or redirect, and then the battle will commence between Digimon and security. But now, or in the future, now that counter timing and hand counters are implemented, which by the way are mainly Digimon, and from what's been revealed, actually do something called burst evolutions, which I personally love as a Digimon fan, because burst evolutions are the types of evolutions that you've seen in the anime and in the video games through Digimon World 3 and Digimon World Next Order, where when you're kind of on the ropes with your opponent Digimon, with your opposing Digimon, you are like, let's burst Evo, right? And then you go ahead and trigger a burst evolution to counter the trouble that you're in. It's kind of like an Ace card, which is exactly why the mechanism seems to be called Ace, which is awesome. But now your player A would trigger all the when attacking effects, and then player B per attack, once per attack, can use a hand counter. I think this is pretty balanced, where player A, if this is right, player A would resolve all when attacking effects first, which means there's a decision-making point there where if there's multiple Digimon on board and the counters rely on Digivolution, what Digimon am I deleting? Because we can probably anticipate for counter cards, if they are mainly only Digimon for now, being level 4, level 5, level 6, right? So if there's a level 3 and a level 5 out, which one do I delete? Because if my opponent has a level 4 counter and it's a good one for the situation, and they have a level 6 counter and it's a good one for the situation, which one has the least kind of like punishment for me? Or deciding on one or the other, you know, that kind of thing. So I love that increased kind of like decision and skill layer there. And then player B would declare block, and then battle would commence. So very cool stuff. I'm so excited for this. Let me know in the comments what you think of this timing, but we're gonna dive into a lot of the cards now, or just 4 of the main cards. All right, so for our first Ace card, you guys, War Greymon Ace. This is very cool. I actually really like the card design, where Ace is kind of just this little section here above the inheritable and below the main Digimon name and level. It doesn't take too much away from the full art, despite having added text as well. And I think that's super healthy, because Digimon is amazing for its arts, for its artwork, and it's something that is to be pretty much enjoyed. But we'll go over it really quickly. So now a lot of Digimon can digivolve over a certain Digimon of whatever color, as long as you pay the cost. So in this case, you can digivolve for over a level 5 with Greymon in its name at 3 costs. So and its hand counter effect is Blast Evolution, which I had alluded to early on. Your Digimon may digivolve into this card without paying the cost, which is ridiculous, right? Like, in the beginning, it's like, oh my gosh, we don't have to pay the cost and we play this on our opponent's turn? That's insane, right? And being a natural blocker too makes this awesome, because now you've got like a ton of different like ways to play defense, because now you blast Evo into this, it's a blocker, and then you can declare block. All turns once per turn, when a card is removed from your security stack, unsuspend this Digimon. I love this. Oh my gosh. Okay, so purple and black are my two main colors, and I've really neglected black. I haven't been able to build a lot of black cards or black decks, even Black War Greymon, and I'm very excited for this because I like the blocker archetype in the color mainly over like most of the other ones, and I'm very excited for this one. And Ace Overflow -4. When this card is sent from battle or under your card to other places, lose 4 memory. And there's a very specific reason why it says sent from battle area or under your card to other places, right? Because if you have a level 5 Ace card or a level 6 Ace card, and you trigger this, or you regularly Digivolve into this, and you Digivolve over it, this is still part of it. As you can see, the Ace mechanic is specifically in the inheritable box, which means it's part of its inheritables. So even if it is under another card, Ace will trigger once this is removed. So I don't necessarily know if that involves, you know, source removal, like what blue does, because if it does, that's really awkward. I want to know how that would work in the future. But mainly for me, I think it has something to do with being deleted. So if your Digimon was bounced to hand, deleted, sent to trash, or bottom decked, whatever, then, you know, as long as it's sent to another place, you're paying to lose that 4 memory, which I think is really rough. But considering that you can play this on your opponent's turn and potentially not only block and delete a Digimon, but totally stop security, like stop your attacks, I think it's pretty fair. We're gonna dive into a few more, and I really want to know what you guys think of this Overflow. I think Overflow is cool because, like, the game has been in a point where we're really abusing the memory gauge. Like, the memory gauge has almost become non-existent with like X Antibody, Cool Boy, with reduced memory or reduced digivolution costs, with reduced play costs. It almost feels like, what's the gauge for, right? Sometimes, not all the time, obviously, but sometimes, and in certain decks, it almost feels like, you know, you could do everything you need at 1 memory. So I think punishing hand trap or hand counter plays like this through Overflow is healthy. All right, you guys, so now we're gonna dive into Metal Garurumon Ace, which I am personally hyped for. As you can see up here, I've got 2 Metal Garurumon, black and regular purple, and then in between them is actually the Beelzemon there. So those are my 2 all-time favorite Digimon, and yeah, we'll dive right into the effects. So hand counter is another blast evolution, which I love. Once again, super thematic, and when digivolving by trashing up to 3 cards from your hand, gain 1 memory for each card trashed. So the BT6, I think it's BT6 Nidhoggmon, would be very good to combo with this, because essentially you'd be gaining 3 memory if you trash 3, and then an extra 1 per Nidhogg that you use to trash during using this effect. And I think that's super powerful as a hand counter combo, because you can end your opponent's turn, assuming they don't have a memory blocker. You can end your opponent's turn fairly quickly, and if that's all you need for game, I think that is pretty huge. That said, it's not like the Black War Greymon we saw in the previous slide, where it just has a block, has the blocker ability, can unsuspend and block again if they get through your security stack. So there's a little bit of a balance there, or a preference that needs to be struck, but I personally prefer the purple Metal Garurumon because of all the combos that purple has to offer with it. When attacking once per turn by trashing 1 card from your hand, delete 1 of your opponent's Digimon to the lowest level. It's only once per turn, but that's totally fine, because this can actually go over a blue base, because it can digivolve over anything with a Garurumon in its name that's level 5, right? So blue base has the ability to bounce low-level Digimon. So if you can actually attack with this, you can potentially trigger bouncing the lower-level Digimon first, and then trigger this effect last to bounce whatever final Digimon is on board. But you have to be very careful with when you play this, because the Overflow -4 is pretty pain. Once this Digimon leaves the battle area or under my card, one of my cards to another place, like bot deck, trash, and hand, I would lose 4 memory. So memory blockers wouldn't even stop that. And that's very smart that they chose lose, because game mechanics should not be, at least in my opinion, hindered by something so simple as a memory blocker, right? All right, you guys. So I wanted to add the main set ace cards as well. So here's 2 that have been leaked. One of them you probably will be a little bit worried about, considering security control is a thing, but I wouldn't worry about it. I think it's fine. Overflow balances this heavy, in my opinion, so it's okay. It's Magna Angemon Ace. So once again, playing from hand, it is a blast evolution. You can digivolve without paying its cost, and on play and when digivolving, if you have 5 or fewer security cards, you can trigger recovery +1. Then if your opponent's Digimon gets, then one of your opponent's Digimon gets -1 KDP for each card in your security stack. You are looking at the cost of this. It is a 4 cost to play, you guys, which is insane, right? For a level 5. It is a 4 cost level 5 to play. That said, it's also an Overflow 3, which means you play it for 4, sure, to counter. You then recover, but if this is somehow removed from the board, you get Overflow -3, right? So you lose 3 memory. Now, the counter effects of both Lilimon Ace and Magna Angemon Ace are only when they digivolve. However, it makes sense that they're an on-play 4, so you can also still use them on your turn to make a defensive play or progress your board state when you're kind of bricking, so to speak. When you don't have a rookie or a level 4, you can slam this. Hopefully your opponent doesn't have an answer to hard playing it, because it's a 4, right? If you're at 3, you're putting them to 1. If they can't answer it, you don't lose memory, and then you can digivolve over it and hopefully progress your board state. That said, if it's lost from a source as well, you still Overflow -3, which is kind of rough. That said, there's a lot of questions still lurking, but I hope that in time it will be resolved. But to me, that's how it's looking to be. But recovery +1 is pretty huge, right? Especially for security control. That said, it might not be that good considering Overflow is a huge mechanic. All right. Lilimon Ace. I think this card is really, really good in a green and can be good for a lot of green cards. It's also fairy, which is insane because its effect is insane. So, Blast Digivolution. Your Digimon may digivolve into this card without paying its cost. And on play, when digivolving, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. Then you may return one of your opponent's suspended Digimon with 5 KDP or less to the bottom of their deck. So, this is huge because you can bottom deck blockers that are 5k. You can also block a lot of floodgates like memory blockers, which have been a big deal for Bloomlord, for example. Obviously, they're going to be way newer cards into the future, but I'm just trying to put context into its uses now to kind of give you guys an idea of how good this card may be in the future. But once again, it's Overflow -3. So the Overflow drawback, I think, really balances how strong these effects are, because if we didn't have Overflow and these cards were out right now, I promise you security control would be steamrolling, and Bloomlord and Bloomlord mainly would be doing much better. All right, so once again, you guys, shouting out Rust Marrow. We're kind of going over what does it all mean. So the point of this is you can evolve your Ace Digimon, because that means they go into the battle area or under a card, right? Or you play them from an Evo source, from under a card to the battle area. You only pay Overflow when they end up elsewhere from the battle area, like hand, deck, or trash. Which means this could be pretty punishing, but it could also be really back and forth in an Overflow meta. Because now you're like, okay, I need a counter, and then my opponent will counter, and then you've got multiple Overflow cards on the board, and then that's just a bouncing of the memory gauge, which is, I think, a complete 180 from how close to 0 we always play right now. So that's pretty awesome. So for now, Rust Marrow is actually settling on Overflow X when this card in battle area or under a card would be moved to somewhere other than those 2 areas, lose X memory. The starting point needs to be specified, otherwise Overflow would trigger during recycling. I'm not entirely sure what that means. But for now, to me, it seems pretty straightforward. And last but not least, we're going to be going into the outlook, or my personal outlook considering all this news. I think the outlook is very, very positive. I like that mulligans are going to be implemented eventually, because I think we're kind of overdue given how close to zero once again we play on the memory gauge, and the ability of decks to just, you know, play close to zero on the memory gauge. If you miss a step and you're unable to mulligan, you kind of don't get a chance to play or showcase what your deck can do. So I like that. The ace mechanic adds more layers of decision making, which I think is a big deal. It's finally a new way to revisit and rethink how we play Digimon, because we now have to consider, while our mind state has always been in North America to like play as close to zero memory as possible by like passing the least amount of memory, now you have to consider things like being able to save your game by countering, knowing full well that if that counter ends up being removed from the battle area or under one of your cards, you could be advancing your opponent's board state, which I think is fair, right? Because you're gonna be countering, you're gonna be stopping someone from literally winning the game potentially with these ace cards, which means that if they don't answer your board state, that's you now who could be potentially winning the game. And then they could counter and back and forth, right? The only feels bad moment is when you play this at a time where your opponent has the removal or everything that they need to get rid of it. So that's kind of one of the key things. But other than that, I think it's like totally fine. Yeah, and that pretty much leads into my final point, that Overflow using these hand counters seem balanced. But that said, these are kind of like the first impressions of what we've seen in the news, and shout out to everybody who's kind of contributed to translating a lot of this news. And yeah, I'm excited for Digimon. ST, like Starter Deck 15, 16, and BT 14 are already leaking in Japan, and to us, that's not gonna come out till like late November, I think, right? Like if I'm not mistaken. So very exciting stuff, and we're gonna be using these potentially for nationals, which is very hype. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and